Hello, I'm Hilary Johnstone. You're watching CBC News Network. Well, the Ontario COVID-19 Science Advisory Table is publishing news today that suggests vaccine protection against COVID is rapidly declining. The data shows it is now at just under 15%. Dr. Peter Jüni is the scientific director of the province's advisory table. He's also professor of medicine and epidemiology at the University of Toronto. So, Dr. Jüni, thank you so much for making some time for us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So this new figure of 14.9% in terms of where we see vaccine coverage right now when it comes to preventing infections, what does that number really mean and how concerned should we be?
Well, so first of all, it's not even that new. The display item that you see, the graph that you see on our dashboard has been there for some time. And what you see basically is just that vaccine protection against infection is melting like snow under the sun. And this is entirely a function of Omicron. Omicron takes over. And what you see basically is that this purple curve on the graph just goes down, down, down. And now, indeed, we're below 15%. What this means in reality basically is that in reality, there's no way, if it comes to infection, to distinguish anymore between a person who is not vaccinated and a person who has received 2 doses. This doesn't say anything about protection against hospital and ICU admission based on everything we know. And you also see that in this graph, the 2 lines high up, yellow and orange, it seems to hold, but we will know a lot more in a few days once we have more data coming in now that hospitals start to see more patients with Omicron infections.
Okay, so while we have this graph up on the screen, I just want to talk through it for a second. And as you pointed out, that line that we see really drop off there, just plummet, that is protection against infection for people who've received
Absolutely.
2 vaccine doses. But those lines at the top that are holding steady, that is in terms of hospitalization and ICU admission. So what this would seem to indicate then that if you are fully vaccinated, or if you have 2 doses rather, that you are going to be protected from hospitalization and ICU admission. Is that what we can sort of take away from this at this point?
This is correct up to now. What is important to realize is that most patients we're still seeing in the hospital right now are patients who have experienced an infection with the Delta variant now. And only in the next few days we will start to see an uptick in numbers of patients admitted for Omicron infections. That's the delay that you typically see, around 10 days or so after we saw the uptick in case numbers for Omicron. Now we will start to see the uptick in hospital admissions.
Okay, and what does all of this mean for people who have had a 3rd dose, a 3rd shot of the vaccine?
So if you have had a 3rd dose, based on everything we know, you probably will need to wait roughly 2 weeks before the 3rd dose offers full protection again. Full protection means then that your risk of getting infected is decreased roughly by 4 to 5-fold. This doesn't mean it will be the same protection as we had against Delta, but it's again much better. This would correspond to roughly 80% protection, when you look at our curves or keep them in mind. And it means that we will have considerably better protection against the hospital admission and ICU admission again. Important, if you have the 3rd dose, it doesn't go immediately, that you're just back to where you were sort of like before, but it takes about 2 weeks.
And do we have any sense of why protection is dropping right now? Is this because of Omicron? I know you said that this is because of Omicron, but is that what's going on here?
Absolutely, absolutely. Omicron is just evading the immune system. And whether you have received 2 doses of the vaccine or have been infected before, you won't have much protection or any protection at all, it seems right now, against infection. The protection hopefully will continue to hold against serious outcomes.
Okay, and I've got about 45 seconds left here, but I want to ask you, based on what we're seeing in that new graph, what do you say to people who might be wondering what is the point of being vaccinated if we are seeing, as you say, protection against infection melting away like the snow, like we're seeing on that line that really comes down quite steeply? What do you say to those people who are wondering what is the point of being vaccinated?
It's an absolutely fair question. Look at the two lines on top of the graph. You know, the yellow and the orange line show you, if all goes well, we'll continue to be really well protected against serious outcomes. And this was the original purpose of vaccination anyway in this situation. And we just now need to make sure that we get these third doses into people's arms as soon as possible so that you see this purple line again go up. That's the idea here.
Okay, Dr. Peter Jüni, thank you so much for making the time for us, for walking us through all of that. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Peter Jüni in Toronto. He's the scientific director of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table.